Our parents raised us as one girl, switching us monthly to avoid having two daughters. When they tried to erase us permanently, we turned their game against them. My parents gave us 7 days to decide which daughter should die. That's not a figure of speech. They placed a bottle of white pills on the dining room table and, with disturbing calm, said it was time to make a choice. One daughter would stay. The other would simply go to sleep. Forever. My name is Cassie. My sister's name is Eliza. I was born in Boulder, Colorado. She was born 10 months later in Denver. To everyone outside our house, there was only one of us, Cassie. Our parents made sure of that. They told us they only had room in their lives, financially, emotionally, even spiritually, for one child. 2 daughters? That wasn't part of the plan. But Eliza and I were nearly identical. Same chestnut hair, same sharp green eyes, same wiry frame. So they created a system. Every month, we switched. Whoever was Cassie that month lived upstairs, attended school, and existed in the world. The other was exiled to the basement. No name, no voice, no existence. We even handed over our toothbrush. At midnight on the first of each month, we stood in the living room for the switching ceremony. Mom would kiss the disappearing girl's forehead and whisper, "See you next month, ghost." Then Dad would lead her downstairs and lock the door behind her. No one ever saw both of us. Not teachers, not friends, not even our pediatrician. Cassie was just one girl with a complicated personality. No one ever guessed there were 2 of us sharing one identity. We kept journals, detailed records of everything. Teachers' names, homework, conversations, secrets, lies. It was the only way to keep the illusion alive. When I got my first period, I had to slide pads under the basement door and whisper instructions to Eliza for the following month. When she broke our arm falling off a swing during her month, I had to fake the memory and wear the cast when it was my turn again. We lived like this from the time we were 5 and 6 years old. I'm 16 now. Eliza just turned 15. We've spent more than a decade pretending to be the same person. And then, this spring, everything changed. During one of Eliza's months, I was locked in the basement when a deep, wrenching pain erupted in my stomach. It felt like someone was scraping my insides with broken glass. I vomited blood into a paint bucket behind the furnace. I couldn't stand. I couldn't scream. Eliza begged our parents to take me to the hospital, but they wouldn't. "She can go when it's her month," Mom said, as if medical care depended on the calendar. When my month finally came, the symptoms disappeared. Completely. The pain, the bleeding, gone like it never existed. 2 weeks later, during Eliza's rotation, it came back. Worse. More blood. More agony. That's when we understood. My body only let itself break down when I didn't exist. The moment I became real again, it locked everything away, forced itself to survive. That night, Eliza and I made a decision. We stood together outside our parents' bedroom, hand in hand, and showed them the blood-streaked towel. "We can't live like this anymore," I said. "Please, no more switching." Mom and Dad exchanged a long, unreadable look. For a moment, I thought, naively, they were going to apologize. Maybe they'd realized how far they'd gone. Mom touched my cheek and said, "You're right." My chest filled with something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Then Dad added, "We need to make a permanent decision. One of you will stay." Mom opened her nightstand drawer and held out a bottle. "These are painless," she said gently. "You'll help us by deciding who deserves to live. You've got a week." I felt the blood drain from my face. Eliza gripped my hand until her knuckles turned white. 7 days. That's how long we had to prove we both deserved to exist. Or one of us would vanish forever, not into the basement this time, but into the ground. We didn't sleep that night. Eliza and I sat cross-legged on the bedroom floor, our shared space, though technically only mine this month, staring at the bottle of pills our parents had left on the kitchen table like a gift no one wanted. 7 days. That's how long we had to prove we were both worth keeping. Eliza, 15, was still technically in her off month, but our parents let her come upstairs for this twisted trial. I was 16 and supposed to be real right now, but nothing about this felt like a life worth claiming. "I'm going back down," she whispered. "They'll expect me to vanish again by morning." "Not yet," I said, squeezing her hand. "Tonight, we plan." We laid out everything we knew, our parents' routines, their tells, their moods. It wasn't just about survival anymore. We needed strategy. If this was going to be a performance, We had to script it perfectly. By dawn, we had one rule: make them question everything. When Eliza left for school as me, Cassie, she wore my hoodie, but not my smile. She made deliberate mistakes, mispronounced my favorite teacher's name, sat in the wrong seat, claimed we had a pop quiz in the wrong class. Minor enough to confuse, not alarm. That same day, I stayed below, forcing my body into stillness. The illness, whatever it was, always hit hardest when I was invisible. I kept notes of symptoms: pain, bleeding, fever spikes. I even smeared blood into tissues and sealed them in a plastic bag. Evidence. Mom didn't come down that night. Neither did Dad. But Eliza did. She crept in after midnight, her shoes off to avoid creaking floorboards, and curled up beside me. "They're watching me," she whispered. Mom didn't blink when I poured orange juice on cereal. She just said, "Cassie's being clumsy again." I almost laughed, then doubled over from a cramp so violent I bit through my lip. On day 2, Dad came to the basement, clipboard in hand. Questions like daggers. What grade did Eliza get in 7th grade math? Who was her homeroom teacher in Denver? Did she ever break her arm? I answered everything wrong, deliberately. He didn't react, just took notes and left. That night, Eliza came back down with a bandage on her hand. "I cut myself on purpose," she said. Told Mom I was feeling off. She said, "It's okay. You're still the one." The one. Singular. "They've already picked," I said. "No," she replied. "Not yet. But they want to." Day 3, we escalated. Eliza faked dizziness in the hallway at school and got sent to the nurse. I smuggled a sample of my vomit into an old prescription bottle and left it at the top of the stairs with a note. "This is what happens when I go unseen." That night, for the first time in months, both our parents came to the basement. They didn't speak to me, just stared, then turned and walked out. "They're scared," Eliza whispered the next night. "They won't say it, but they're starting to believe this might not be something they can control." Day 4, I heard them fighting in the kitchen. Not shouting, never shouting. Just clipped words through gritted teeth. "They're both sick now. How do we hide that?" We agreed on one child. That same day, they installed a lock on the inside of Eliza's door. "They're not letting me come back down anymore," she said through the heating vent that night. "Mom says it's for safety." Dad said nothing. Just checked the new lock 3 times. They had chosen. I wasn't it. But they weren't ready for what we'd planned. Months ago, I'd stolen a screwdriver from Dad's toolbox. Hid it in the crawl space behind the water heater. I used it now to start loosening the basement door hinges. Quietly, slowly. Eliza kept them distracted upstairs. Burn a meal. Mixed up names. Laughed at the wrong jokes. Day 5. The sickness hit harder than ever. I collapsed halfway up the stairs and barely made it back down. My entire body was rebelling. It knew I wasn't supposed to be gone this long. That night, Eliza didn't respond through the vent. I knocked softly, 3 taps, our signal. Nothing. I waited hours. Still nothing. On day 6, the lock on my door clicked. Mom came down, stood in the doorway with a tray of food. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "this ends." "Who did you pick?" I asked. Her eyes flicked away. "The one who's stronger." She left the food. I didn't touch it. That night, I heard 3 soft taps on the air duct. Then her voice. "They drugged me," Eliza whispered. I pretended to swallow it. Hid it under my tongue. "I'm coming tonight." We run. I tightened the last screw on the basement door's hinge, slid the plate back into place, and packed everything we needed into a pillowcase. The journal, the pill bottle, the bloody tissues, our forged ID papers. If we got out, we'd go to the police. If they didn't believe us, we'd go public. If that didn't work, we'd keep running. Tomorrow was day 7. They thought it would be the end of one daughter. But they were wrong. It would be the beginning of both. I had the last screw in my hand when I heard her voice through the floor vent. "Cassie," Eliza whispered. "They're locking my door from the outside now." It was barely audible, like the house itself was trying to smother her voice. I pressed my ear closer to the vent. I pretended to take the pills. I spat them out in the bathroom sink. "They think I'm asleep," she said, her voice dry and cracked. "Tonight. We have to do it tonight." My hand trembled around the screwdriver. I stared at the partially unscrewed door hinge. 6 days of planning, rehearsing, gathering evidence. It all came down to this. That night, I waited until the hallway light shut off. The only sounds were the refrigerator humming and the faint rustle of tree branches against the window panes. Then I finished unscrewing the basement door. I caught it before it hit the floor. Stepped out into the house like a ghost crawling back into the world. I wore a hoodie to hide my face and moved quietly, my feet practiced in the floorboard's betrayal. Eliza was already waiting by the laundry room, near the back door. Her hands were shaking. Her hair was wet. She must have washed her mouth out a dozen times. She looked terrified, but not for herself. "You're okay," I whispered. "Are we?" she asked, and I didn't have an answer. We crept toward the door. Every step was the slow unfurling of years of tension. A hallway we'd walked 1,000 times now felt longer than any road outside. Just as my hand reached the doorknob, the hallway light behind us clicked on. "I see you." Dad's voice. Calm. Cold. Not surprised. We turned slowly. He stood at the far end of the hall in his robe, his hand resting inside the pocket like he might pull out something worse than words. A second later, Mom appeared behind him, arms crossed. Her expression wasn't shock or anger. It was calculation. "You weren't supposed to be awake tonight," Dad said. "We gave you peace. You chose chaos. You gave us a death sentence," I said. "You think this is normal?" "You were lucky," Mom said softly. "One life. No mistakes. One name. 2 people was always going to be too much." Eliza stepped forward, voice trembling. "We were children. You made us disappear. One of us every month." "That's because 2 of you was never an option," Dad said. "This was survival." "No," I said. "This was control." For the first time, I saw a flicker of something in Dad's face. Not guilt. Not fear. Contempt. As if I'd failed a test he never told me I was taking. "We were trying to perfect a child," Mom said. "We thought if we alternated you long enough, you'd merge. One memory. One identity. We almost succeeded." Almost. That word chilled me more than anything they said before. "I'll make it easy for you," Eliza said, and pulled the pill bottle from her pocket. She held it out. "Here. If you're so sure, finish it. Pick one of us right now." They didn't move. She took a step closer. "What? You want us to do it? So you can keep your hands clean?" Dad scoffed. "You already made the choice for us. This stunt. It proves which of you is unstable." "I'm not the one who drugged my own daughter," she said. "You weren't supposed to remember that," Mom whispered. Quiet. Almost to herself. And just like that, it made sense. They'd been drugging us longer than we realized. I remembered the nights I'd wake up groggy, disoriented, unable to remember what month it was. The vague memories. The fog. The missing time. They weren't just swapping us. They were trying to erase us. Eliza stared at them. Then she dropped the pill bottle. It hit the floor and scattered, tiny white capsules bouncing across the tile. "No more switching," she said. "We're both real. And we're leaving." We turned. Reached the door. Dad didn't follow. But his voice came low, final. "Run all you want. The world will never believe you. 2 girls sharing one life. That's not a survival story. That's insanity." We stepped into the night anyway. We didn't stop walking for miles. Past the neighborhood we grew up in. Past the school where we'd traded lives 100 times. Into a town where no one knew our name. At a roadside diner near the state line, we found a bathroom stall and curled up on opposite sides. Our entire world was packed into a backpack. The journal, fake IDs we'd created months ago, evidence we hoped someone would care about. We didn't talk much. Just listened to the buzz of the neon lights and the scrape of forks against plates. When a waitress noticed us on her break, she leaned over the stall door. "You girls all right?" she asked, eyeing the bruises we hadn't covered. "No," I said, "but we're finally free." She nodded once and slipped 2 grilled cheese sandwiches under the door without another word. We thought we were safe. We thought it was over. But we had no idea what they'd already set in motion. They weren't done with us. Not even close. We lasted exactly 3 days. 3 days of borrowed time, greasy diner food, and taking turns sleeping in public restrooms. We stayed off Wi-Fi, paid in cash, swapped jackets to avoid being noticed. For the first time in years, we were 2 people living one truth. But the world didn't recognize that truth. On the 3rd morning, in a cramped bus terminal outside Boise, Idaho, we saw the news. Missing, Cassie Fielding, 16, believed to be in mental distress. Parents urged daughter to come home, warned public she may be unwell and confused. My photo flashed on the screen, but it wasn't just me. It was Eliza, a hallway security still, wearing my hoodie, staring blankly at a classroom wall. They used me, she whispered, voice hollow. They turned me into a symptom. They're framing you as my delusion, I said. They made you vanish again. I felt sick. They hadn't filed a report about both of us. Just me. Because officially, there was only one daughter. That was their advantage. The system couldn't lose what it never acknowledged. And if I were mentally ill, everything we said could be dismissed. They're not trying to find us, Eliza said quietly. They're trying to erase you. And bury me. We found a legal clinic that afternoon, a modest strip mall office where the secretary looked more tired than suspicious. We told her everything. Showed her our forged ID copies, the journal, even a bloody tissue I'd sealed in a sandwich bag from the basement. She listened, nodded sympathetically, and asked us to wait while she made some calls. We waited 3 hours. Then 2 officers arrived. They didn't even ask our names. One walked straight toward me. Cassie, he said gently. It's okay. Your parents just want to get you help. Eliza stepped in front of me. Don't touch her. She's not going anywhere. The second officer placed a hand on his belt. There's been a welfare alert for a missing teen. You're not listed on any record, ma'am. Please step aside. And just like that, she became no one again. I wanted to scream the truth, but I knew what would happen. The moment I said I had a sister who didn't legally exist, they'd haul me off in cuffs. Or worse, put me in a psych hold. We hadn't miscalculated. We'd underestimated just how deep our parents had buried the lie. They took me back. The house looked unchanged, but it smelled different. Too clean. The lavender floor polish was overwhelming, like they were scrubbing the memory of us from every surface. Photos lined the walls, just one girl. Always the same hair, same smile, same forced joy. Sometimes it was me. Sometimes Eliza. Never both. They'd stitched a life together out of pieces of us. Mom hugged me too tightly. You had an episode, sweetie, she whispered. We're just glad you're safe. Dad stood a few feet back, arms folded, watching. His expression wasn't relief. It was triumph. I played along. I smiled, ate their meals, laughed when prompted. I was back in the role, Cassie Fielding, dutiful daughter. A girl without shadows. But I never stopped watching. Every night, I whispered Eliza's name into my pillow, barely loud enough for breath. I didn't know where she was. If she was safe. If she'd been picked up, or worse, left behind completely. I begged the silence for a sign. And on the 5th night, I got one. The house went still just after 1 a.m. I waited 15 minutes, then tiptoed down the hallway and opened the basement door. My heart pounded as I slipped down the stairs, flashlight in hand, careful to step only on the edges of the creaky steps. The air was heavy, like it remembered everything. I hadn't been down there since the night we escaped. Everything looked exactly the same. The sleeping bag, the peeling wall paint, the notebook stash in the metal box. And there, lying neatly on the mattress, was the journal. Our journal. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. The first page had been torn out, replaced with a fresh sheet of paper. 5 words in Eliza's handwriting. I'm still out here, Cass. I sat down on the floor, notebook clutched to my chest, and cried for the first time since I'd been dragged back. She hadn't given up. She was alive, and she was still fighting for us. That's when I knew. The end of their story wasn't going to be ours. They thought they'd erased her. They thought they'd rewritten me. But they forgot the most dangerous truth of all. We remember everything. I didn't sleep after finding the journal. Each night, I returned to the basement, our old prison. I reread every page, every scribbled entry Eliza and I had written in secret. I added my own updates, hoping she'd somehow find her way back and read them too. Mom and Dad acted like nothing had happened. They'd stopped talking about my episode. No more psych evaluations, no more lectures about gratitude. Just smiles, forced warmth, and occasional questions they already knew the answers to. They thought they'd won, but they were slipping. Dad wasn't checking my room at night anymore. Mom barely noticed when I left dishes in the sink. They were tired of pretending, of lying, of managing the narrative. And that's when I found the flash drive. It was buried in the lining of my old backpack, one they'd nearly thrown out during my reintegration. Somehow, Eliza had hidden it there. Maybe before the escape. Maybe after. It was labeled only with one word. Proof. I plugged it into my school laptop. Video files. Dozens. Some were from a cheap security cam pointed at the basement stairwell. Others were shot from vents. Recordings Eliza must have hidden years ago. And then, one clip stood out. March 3rd, Night of Blood. I hesitated, then clicked. The video opened on a grainy image. Me, curled on the basement floor, crying out and vomiting blood into a rag. The timestamp confirmed it. The night I had begged them for help. The footage showed everything. Mom staring from the doorway, expression blank. Dad appearing briefly, then walking away. No one lifted a hand. No one called for help. The light turned off. The door shut. That was the night they decided I wasn't real enough to save. I copied the files to a second flash drive, then tucked it into my boot. The next morning, I sat across from Mom in the kitchen and told her I wanted to meet with our old family therapist. "I think I'm ready to talk," I said. She lit up. "That's a good sign, honey. I'll make the appointment myself." I'd already called the clinic days earlier. Under a different name. I told them I had something urgent to give them. Something no one else could see. We drove together. She wore her softest cardigan. The one she used when she wanted people to think she was the perfect mother. The therapist ushered us in. I barely sat down before handing her the flash drive. "I brought something," I said. "You'll want to see it before we start." Mom stiffened beside me. "Cassie, what are you?" "Just let her speak," the therapist said gently. I didn't speak. I just watched. As the video played, Mom's hands twitched. Her breathing became shallow. The therapist's face darkened. Not just with concern, something sharper. Controlled fury. We didn't finish the session. The therapist called her supervisor. Then the child welfare office. It didn't end with sirens. No arrests. No front-page scandals. But the investigation began. The footage triggered a formal inquiry. Child Services interviewed me for hours, comparing stories, analyzing inconsistencies. They tracked down old-school reports, attendance records, medical forms. Nothing added up. The handwriting on my third-grade math test didn't match my seventh-grade essays. Some teachers remembered Cassie as quiet and polite. Others said she was outspoken and aggressive, because they weren't remembering the same person. And then Eliza walked into the child welfare office. She wore clean clothes, her hair braided, a steady look in her eyes. She brought the original journal, the one with both our names inside. She gave them a statement. Then she said, "Test us." They took our DNA, pulled samples, compared records, asked us separate questions from old journal entries, dates, names, memories. We didn't get every detail right, but we got enough. The truth was undeniable. Our parents were never charged with criminal abuse, but the state revoked their custody permanently. The official report cited psychological manipulation, prolonged neglect, and willful endangerment. A quiet scandal. Whispers, but no headlines. They left town within months. New state, new names. Last I heard, they started volunteering at a parenting seminar. Let them. We stayed. Eliza kept her middle name, June. I took a new name entirely, Lena. A fresh page. We weren't trying to erase our past. We were building something they couldn't overwrite. High school was awkward at first. People asked if we were twins. We told them we were sisters. Close, but not in the way they'd understand. No one asked twice. Some nights, I still wake up thinking I'm back in the basement. That if I move, the light will shut off and I'll disappear again. But most nights, I sleep. Because the girl they tried to delete didn't vanish. She rewrote the story.